Hey there, everybody. Okay, so in the last week, a ridiculous amount of Sailor Moon stuff has been going on, and I was going to make a vlog about it as it was all news, but pretty much every time I tried, it just dissolved into me squealing incoherently for like 5 minutes. And I figured there wasn't much point to you guys seeing that because you don't need to see me act any dorkier than you already do. So in the last week, some big news in the Sailor Moon fandom happened. You guys already know all of this stuff by now if you care about Sailor Moon at all. So Sailor Moon has been unlicensed in the United States for like 10 years. For it feels like forever. Um, and it's been thought of as kind of unlicensable. All of this stuff that's been going on with the 20th anniversary stuff has been great, but fans in America still couldn't really get their hands on the original series in any official capacity. And now it's been picked up to be licensed by Viz Media. We're talking uncut, fully, remastered. They're doing an entire new English dub, which I think is going to be very interesting. There's going to be no cousins or Lady Zoisite or anything like that, which I think is really cool. Like, I don't, this news is a big deal. And then part of Viz's media push for this has been that the original episodes are getting put up on Hulu. And I thought it would be fun to do vlogs of me sort of re-watching, reliving the whole series as I kind of buff up my Sailor Moon knowledge for the remake anime. So first up, a little bit of my Sailor Moon past knowledge stuff. I have been a fan of Sailor Moon almost my entire life, but pretty much all of my life that I can recall. I watched it on the original US dubbed broadcast in, I believe it was 1994, so I was been 3 years old. And I loved Sailor Moon more than I think is even probably healthy. I was absolutely obsessed. My mother had to go and search the entire world for Sailor Moon stuff. I had like Sailor Moon bed sheets. I still have them someplace. Um, my mother made me a Sailor Moon Halloween costume, and this was before the show had really taken off, so everybody thought I was Wonder Woman, which I remember irrationally pissed me off as a 4-year-old. So just imagine tiny, small me in a Sailor Moon costume being really mad because it just irrationally pissed me off. And still, I don't understand it because they clearly don't look anything like each other, and I don't understand why you would assume that Sailor Moon is Wonder Woman. They had nothing to do with each other, and I have my hair in pigtails. And I've moved on. um, so yeah, I've watched the show since pretty much it's been on the air. I watched it when it was on Toonami for a while. Sailor Moon was one of my first forays into, sort of internet fandom with Save Our Sailors and all that stuff. I had read some of the Tokyo Pop manga, the original badly translated one, that I had picked up in libraries and stuff, but I hadn't read the whole thing. I'd only sort of read about what supposedly happens in it. I have read all of the probably can't see that. Yeah, I have read all of the Kodansha re-releases that came out starting a couple years ago, um, and I really love the manga even more than I loved the cartoon as a kid. I think because it speaks to me so much, just philosophically, and I love Naruto Takeuchi's art. Um, I also read Sailor V. I have that back there somewhere. Um, I'm getting Sailor Moon tattoos at some point. Like, the point is, I am a big, giant Moonie. So we're going to talk about episode 1 today, which is the Crybaby Usagi's Beautiful Transformation. Right now, only the subtitled version is on Hulu. So it's just the Japanese, with subtitles. If that's a deal breaker for you, the dub will hopefully not be taking too long until we get that. So if you prefer a dub, that's going to be a thing. It's going to be in English at some point. It's not going to be the dub that you remember from the 90s. So if you're thinking about watching it because you're like, oh, I'm a 90s kid and this is going to be nostalgic, you'll still get some of that, but it's not going to be like Molly's probably not going to have her Jersey accent. Even on a lower quality setting on Hulu, it looks beautiful. I actually have a couple of the couple of release DVDs that they did put out. I have, I actually have a couple of them. I paid for these, with the dub on them. Um, and whatever they ripped them from looks horrible and muddy, and all the stuff in the background and the henshin scenes are just like a big blurry mush. This is bright, it's clean, and really colorful and really fun. Looking at it again, I totally understand why my 3-year-old self lost her mind over it. Just in terms of it's so bright and colorful and inviting. Clearly, like, completely uncut. It's got the eye catches in between the the eye catches are there in between the commercials, everything. As far as I know, I was not around in Japan in 1992. In terms of plot, episode 1 obviously isn't super heavy on it because it's just establishing characters, mostly Usagi, and Luna a little bit, and setting up the premise. It's about a girl named Usagi. She's 14 in the beginning. She's in the 8th grade. And she basically finds out that she is destined to become a soldier in a sailor suit, with magical powers, and and find the Moon Princess, who she has to protect from the evil, villain Dark Kingdom energy sucking people. That's the premise. This episode is setting up Usagi as a character, mostly setting up what the Sailor Moon power set is. She's very much a real 14-year-old girl in a way that I really appreciate, because she's not necessarily idealized. She's sweet as pie and, the most pure little snowflake in the world in some ways, but she is lazy, and she struggles with her grades, and she's obsessed with food, and she clearly has trouble sort of concentrating. She's a big crybaby, and this is obviously her in the first episode, so this is before any kind of character development. And there's something about the fact that these, some of her sort of more stereotypically feminine traits aren't really vilified, which I really like. I like the fact that it's okay that she cries. I like the fact that she's I identify with her. I really do. I'm kind of a schlubby woman child, so I still identify with her more than I'd like to admit. And she's running late for school. She runs into this caps that these little kids are messing with, and even though I think that moment is starting to show the innate goodness within her, because she's running late for school. She really should be going and doing what she's doing, and she sees that these kids are messing with this cat, and she doesn't even hesitate to go over and try and help and try and stop it and do what's right and do what's good. Not necessarily because she's thinking, oh, that's the right thing to do, and she just is innately a good person, and I feel like that's something that one little moment shows really nicely. And then of course the cat turns out to be Luna, who I'm wearing today, and Luna finds her and informs her that she is the sailor soldier that's meant to find the other ones and save the Moon Princess, and she gives her the locket, and there's fighting. This episode does not have a lot of action. It has the monster of the day, but because this is the first day, it's not quite as formulaic. One thing that I thought was really interesting is that she reacts to this in a way that I feel like most people who just get thrown into a situation that's terrifying would react. She freaks out, she starts crying, and, even though people tell her that crying isn't going to help her, it actually kind of does. She has this weird, like, sonic crying thing that dispels the enemies, which I don't believe we ever see again. I will see. If we see it again, I'll be like, oh, there's the sonic crying that made her hair gems glow. Tuxedo Mask shows up very briefly to give her moral support. Mamoru, her love interest in the future, shows up briefly to berate her and call her bunhead, you know. Actually really excited who they're going to cast for the dub, so when that gets announced I'll probably do a separate video about that other than these vlogs. There's some things that I will always love and that will always be really important to me, and Sailor Moon is one of them. And part of that is because it's pretty and bright, and then one thing that I think that I had kind of forgotten, because I haven't actually watched the original show in a while, is how kind of lighthearted it is at this point. It's very fun, it's very lighthearted. I mean, there are lots of comic bits, there are lots of silly bits, and then one thing that I appreciate about this episode, and then something that will continue on in the show, is that they don't feel the need to always have Asagi be pretty. You know, she makes faces that are really not always the most appealing, and I'm sure I do the same thing. So far, the remaster looks like it's off to a good start. I'm excited to see what happens, so I will try and do one of these weeks, and I'll see you next time.